You know, there's quite a few famous BLM cases that actually were before my time. They weren't super relevant by the time that I started doing this channel, so you don't get a lot of my perspective on it because there was no real reason for me to mention it before. And one of those cases is actually the Tamir Rice case. Tamir Rice, 12-year-old boy, had a BB gun or a fake gun that looked real. Police pull up. They tell him to drop the gun. Tamir doesn't make a good move in the officer's estimation, and unfortunately, he was shot and killed. And I have a lot of sympathy for Tamir Rice's family. I have a lot of sympathy for him. This case should not have happened, and I understand that in the context of America, we lose about 30 people in this country to the police due to the fact that they have not real guns. They end up dying. This is one of the reasons we have the orange tab on it and all those things. But in reality, it's a horrible case, and a mother lost her 12-year-old, and her 12-year-old, even though there was reason to believe that he was a threat in that moment, wasn't actually a threat in that moment to the officers. Now, even though I haven't done a dedicated video to Tamir Rice, I have actually talked about the case in brief moments on this channel before. I've also discussed Tamir Rice and her comments about how Black Lives Matter, the organization, and a bunch of these activists use her son's name in order to raise money while they essentially abandon her, and how unhappy she actually is with people who have gotten famous, like Tamika Mallory to be specific, at the Grammys, based on the fact that they keep using her son's name. But the thing is, Tamir Rice, while it is a tragedy, while I am very sympathetic to that situation, gets a lot of outsized attention. All of these Black Lives Matter cases get a lot of outsized attention because there are horrific cases. There are disgusting cases involving children the same age as Tamir, children younger than Tamir, that happen almost every day in this country. What we tend to focus on are the double unicorn cases, a black person being killed by a white cop. Typically, if a black person is going to be killed, just like any group of people, they're going to be killed by somebody of the same race. Now, the homicide rates for the black community are significantly higher than any other community in this country, which is one of the reasons why we put a focus on black crime. But today, what we're going to do is actually go over a story out of Atlanta that is not going to get anywhere near the same attention as Tamir Rice, despite the fact that it is incredibly tragic and also, more importantly, insanely horrific and goes to the core of the issue, which is the fact that people do not care about the lives of those in their own community, and in this instance, don't even care about their own friends. Today we're going to talk about Zion Charles, who was a 12-year-old who was gunned down while his group of friends was trying to gun down another teenager. And we gotta just discuss this because the video after the fact is something that you need to see, you need to know, so you can understand not only the level of crime that we're dealing with, but what the impact is of soft on crime policies in this country. But before we get into that, I just want to thank the people who subscribed over at actualjusticewarrior.com/join, and my patrons and my Subscribe Star people and my YouTube members, because there's no sponsor for this video. This one is just for you.
Coming after Thanksgiving and headed to Christmas, the last thing that they should be preparing for is a funeral of their children.
Tonight, we continue to learn more about Saturday's shooting near Atlantic Station. Atlanta police say there were 3 shooters and only 1 intended target, but 6 teens were shot in the crossfire.
Now, by the way, the fact that you might not have heard about this story unless you live in Atlanta or live in Georgia is quite troubling. Here we have a shooting where teenagers, and by the way, Zion is actually not a teenager. Let me correct myself from earlier. He's 12 years old, so just shy of a teenager, a preteen. 2 of them were killed, and 6 teenagers were wounded in a shooting in Atlanta, Georgia, and it virtually got no attention. And the reason why it didn't get any attention is because this is an instance of black on black violence. This is an instance of black on black crime. And if you've ever wondered why people have such an issue with an organization called Black Lives Matter, it is because they don't care about cases like this. And these are the overwhelming majority of cases, even if this one in particular is particularly egregious. Let's continue into the segment so you guys can hear what went down.
Ron, I'll be honest, to see these young men laughing and carrying on is downright disturbing. You're about to see it. And to know that Zion was with them. His mom admitted that he snuck out of a friend's house. He came here to the 17th Street Bridge, Atlantic Station. He met up with his buddies, and then this group left this 12-year-old to die.
Well, oftentimes I make fun of the corniness of local news, but honestly, the anchor on the street really lays it out for you. He really laid out what went down in this scenario, and it needs to be emphasized that Zion was actually with the group of kids that were doing the shooting. Now, he was 12 years old. Obviously, he's with the kids that he looks up to. I'm not going to pretend he's this innocent angel, but again, he's 12 years old. We all make mistakes going through our lives, and the idea that hanging with the wrong crowd would not only result in your death, but also would result in your abandonment is so troubling and heartbreaking that even though I'm not going to pretend that he's this innocent angel, just like in the Tamir Rice scenario, I'm not going to pretend that he was doing absolutely nothing wrong, it is still incredibly troubling and incredibly disgusting, especially when you see the video after the fact.
Just minutes before shots were fired on Saturday night, surveillance video captured this group walking along 17th Street. APD says the young man with the black and gold hoodie is one of the shooters. The teen in all yellow at the bottom right is 12-year-old Zion Charles, who will soon be gunned down. Walking just feet behind him, APD says, is a second shooter. You see him again on a different camera. Minutes later, APD says 15-year-old Cameron Jackson rolls by on a scooter.
Somebody else's name, they say, that's Cameron, that's our position. That's when shots rang out.
Now look, at this moment, I don't have complete information. However, from what I can see from this news segment and other research that I've done, it appears to be a gang-related shooting. Whether or not Cameron was in a gang, I think it's likely, but that's not the point that we're going to talk about. The point is that all of the shooters are on the side opposite Cameron. There are no shooters with Cameron, according to the reports as they're being described at this moment. So Zion's friends are the ones with the gun.
Chaos followed. 17th Street was locked down, but the shooters managed to get over to the Arts Center MARTA station across 85.
Now the shots rang out. Obviously, you guys know 6 people are wounded. That's what they opened with in this segment. Cameron is wounded significantly. He ended up passing away 2 days later at the hospital on Monday, but Zion is hit and critically injured. And this 12-year-old kid who came out to hang out with his friends, obviously his friends were bad people, but he's left on the sidewalk to die. These people escape without him, and the way that they act in the later surveillance video, it's as if they didn't even realize that this kid existed. He showed up to hang out with them. He's wearing the proper colors to hang out with them. Clearly, he looks up to them, and he snuck out in order to do this. It's midnight, and they left this kid to die alone on the streets at age 12 years old from bullets that they misfired that ended up hitting him.
Cameras picked up the group. You see the suspect in the blue hoodie walking down the stairs, followed by the young man in the yellow and black hoodie. And as they wait for the train,
They also seem to be celebrating, making gestures and talking about the shooting.
all smiles and handshakes. But what you don't see is their buddy Zion. APD says he was lying along 17th Street, taking his last breaths. But his group, who his mom says he snuck out to meet up with, continued on.
It's fun. They're celebrating the fact that they shot the person that they were aiming for. Maybe they don't even realize that the kid that was with them, who they weren't trying to kill, ended up dying. Maybe they did know that one of them hit him. Maybe they saw him hit the floor. But regardless, they have no care in the world for 12-year-old Zion. Their own friend, their own buddy, their own person in their friend group ended up dead on the sidewalk, and they're just having a good time. And even worse, because these people are predators at this young age, they continued on with their criminality and creating problems even while they were on the train.
During the train ride, they antagonized different customers. They flashed gang signs.
Take one more good look. While APD says this guy is the primary shooter, this teen also opened fire and say they believe the third shooter is among the group.
Yeah, that's right. They just killed someone, they're all hyped up, they're celebrating, and they decide to antagonize other people on the train. So if somebody would have taken that a little bit off and actually stepped to them, they likely would have murdered that person too. This is the group that we're dealing with. These people need to be charged with felony murder. Each and every single one of them, 2 counts of it, by the way, because they're all participating in this. There's 3 shooters among them. I'm not exactly worried about which bullet killed which person. They all need to do some serious time, and we need to change up how we're treating underage kids when it comes to this level of serious criminality. There's been a huge movement in this country to raise the age of prosecution. So there are some people who advocate with barely prosecuting these kids, treating them with kid gloves, and pretending that it's not their fault. And honestly, if it wasn't for systemic structures and structural systemic structures, they likely would have cared about their 12-year-old friend that they left on the street to die at midnight because they couldn't care less about him. These people are who is being presented to us as innocent victims. These are the people who are being presented to us as the Aladdins, the people who are just, trying to feed their family. They just happened to need to kill a kid on a scooter, didn't care about the crossfire, ended up wounding 6 people total and killing one of their buddies, and they had so little regard for human life that even after intentionally killing somebody and then unintentionally killing another person, they were all smiles, all celebrations, and itching for another fight, so they were antagonizing other people on the train. These people are not victims. These people are monsters, and they need to be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law, and if there are limitations on the fullest extent of the law, then we need to lift those limitations for next time.
And again, to know the chaos and the fear that these teens put into so many people right here on the 17th Street, and then to watch them act as if nothing happened is alarming. And it really makes you question, is a curfew really going to stop these teens and gangs from committing more violence?
The answer is no, it's not going to stop them, and I'm so sick and tired of stupid, out-of-proportion solutions to serious problems like serious violent crime, and in this instance, a double murder and a mass shooting. A curfew, that's really what you're going to implement? Nobody out after 11:30, I'm sure that's going to solve all the problems. I mean, they already set up a barrier. These kids were able to jump the barrier, and they weren't intercepted at any point in the train station, and they were able to get away with it. And by the way, these are Zion's friends. Now, I use the term friends rather loosely, since not only did they kill him, but they left him to die on the street because they had no regard for him as a person, so people know exactly who they are. They know who Zion's hanging out with. There are pictures of Zion clearly with these people on social media, and yet nobody's coming forward. Nobody's saying that that 12-year-old that I liked was gunned down by this person, because you have a culture of protecting violent criminals rather than doing justice. You have a culture that worships the gang leaders rather than puts people in a position where they could fight back against them. And again, the curfew is such an obnoxious announcement after this. If I was the mother of this kid, and by the way, she spoke to the news later on, it is gut-wrenching, but if I was the mother of this kid, first of all, I would feel horrible in that I let my kid sleep over at another person's house, and then my kid snuck out to hang out with them, but also I would feel disgusted with the system that thinks, well, maybe if we institute a curfew, the kids will stop shooting each other up in these giant, massive groups. No, there are obviously deeper problems in these communities, and you need to have an active, engaged police force that is working to disrupt these gang organizations. Criminal organizations should not be allowed to flourish just because we're all upset about George Floyd getting kneeled on, or in this case, the guy that was shot in the parking lot of the Wendy's. I believe it's Rayshard Brooks. Absolutely insane, absolutely absurd, but of course, the absurdity of this segment gets even worse.
Well, as you know, they want change. They say it has to happen. They say we are failing these young men and women. In fact, we know there is going to be a Peace in the Streets anti-violence walk right here on 17th Street Friday night.
Yeah, that's right. The community leaders are getting together because they think we need some change, and they're going to do a Peace in the Streets march, so that way you could feel like you're doing something productive while you're actually doing nothing. These are the same organizations that fight back against suspensions in schools, all kinds of discipline, that want the police to pull back. These are the same organizations that join up with national organizations for justified instances of police on suspect killing, like the Rayshard Brooks case, and they're the reason why that the cops were pulled back. You have a station at midnight, a very popular station, and there's no law enforcement anywhere nearby. They were able to escape the police line because it took them that long to set it up. It's absurd. What we're watching here is insanity repeat over and over again, and nobody wants to step up and do what's necessary to stop it. You have to target these kids. You have to go after the gangs. You have to fight back. You can't be doing this, oh, well, they're just babies, so when they pull out guns and try to kill somebody and accidentally kill another person, on top of the target that they were trying to get and wound 6 other teenagers, well, honestly, like, we gotta look at the systemic structures. Maybe we should do a walk, because these kids who are celebrating the fact that they murdered somebody, who don't care about the fact that their friend was dead and got killed in their quest to murder somebody, will likely see that march and realize that it's time to change my ways and be a solid, good person. Be this amazing citizen that I always wanted to be.
I tried, y'all. I called the police office almost 30 times. 30 times in the last 2 years. They told me they can't do nothing.
Look, Zion Charles is not going to be a household name. He's not going to get any of the fame or anything like that. However, when you listen to his mother, when you listen to the fact that she called the police on her own son 30 times, she tried to get him some kind of help, try to separate him from the gang. They were basically completely disempowered due to his age, and they couldn't do anything to help him. She knew he was breaking into cars. She said that he was troubled. Obviously, her perspective is that this is her son, but she still actually went to law enforcement, tried to get him arrested, do anything, and the cops were completely incapable of doing it, because the cops' ability to act has been stripped so much by the Atlanta mayor, by district attorneys that refuse to do their jobs, and by a woke infrastructure that is targeting the police and preventing them from doing the good work that is necessary.
Yesterday, she addressed the Atlanta Public Safety Committee, saying Zion was running with a bad crowd and breaking into cars. A week before his death, she says she begged police to intervene, but they said they couldn't.
And you see, she would much rather have her kid arrested, detained for a little while. She called the police just a week before, than have him dead on the street, which is what ultimately ended up happening to him.
Again, it's a tragic situation.
Atlanta police arrested 2 teens on Election Day and charged them with murder in the shooting that occurred on 17th Street, just feet away from the popular Atlantic Station. It's where 12-year-old Zion Charles and 15-year-old Cameron Jackson were murdered.
Now, I do want to point out that at this moment in time, there were actually 2 arrests made. It was actually made on the same day that the Georgia runoff happened, and they arrested a 16-year-old and a 15-year-old. Now, whether or not these were the shooters, it doesn't seem like the cops are saying that. However, all of the indications based on the fact that they're blurring the surveillance video would lead me to believe that there are at least 2 of the 3 shooters.
Police say both suspects have opened up.
Again, they were able to say that they were significantly involved. And again, I can't go into a lot of details into what was shared with us.
But again, we need mass arrests. We need this whole group to be arrested because they participated in the murder. There's also a 3rd shooter. And when you're committing a felony and 2 people die, that's felony murder. Now, they do have some word from Cameron's mother, who's the 15-year-old who was killed. And I'm going to play that for you because, you know, I want to give the perspective of the family members, even though initially when I was recording this video, it pissed me off too much to play their words.
Cameron Jackson's mother says the arrests are bittersweet.
It's heartbreaking, you know, on both sides, because now we've lost four young boys, you know, so it's heartbreaking.
Now, look, I understand that there's a lot of religious people in black communities in this country, and disproportionately so in the South, but I'm sorry, if you murdered my son and another boy, you're not 2 boys also lost. This doesn't compound the tragedy. This is the first stage injustice. Again, there's not a lot of details out related to what her son was doing or anything like that, or any potential gang affiliations. So obviously this could be a scenario where, again, both people were a party or member of another gang or whatever. It doesn't really matter to me. But they killed him, and I'm not weeping for the mothers of the people who pulled the trigger. I'm not weeping for them or anything like that. I want them to have the longest possible sentence because they robbed 2 lives and they should never see the outside of a jail cell. Maybe after 20, 30 years, if you want to say because they're young, we give them a chance for parole. I understand that argument. But honestly, that cold, callous nature, the laughing about it, the enjoying it, that would really stick in my craw. And there's absolutely no way, if it was my kid, I would be talking about how there's just another tragedy. Now, again, everything that I'm saying are just my personal feelings, me trying to put myself in that person's shoes. It's not an attack on the mother or anything like that. I couldn't even begin to understand her loss, and people say a lot of things when they're grieving that don't make sense to other people who aren't in that position. I'm just giving you my visceral, emotional reaction to this. I understand that she might very well be a significantly better person than I am, especially in the way that she's talking about the families of the kids who were the shooters and the kids themselves. I wouldn't do it, but again, it's not an attack on her. However, this is an attack and an indictment on our nation as a whole. This is an attack on people who are too cowardly to acknowledge what's going on in too many black communities across this country, and it's an attack on activists that prop themselves up, make themselves famous based on the idea that they care harder about black lives, that are going to completely ignore this story, that are going to make sure that nobody mentions this and none of the kids who died in this scenario are household names, because solving actual issues in the black community is not how they make their money. The way they make their money is to pander. The way they make their money is to sow division. The way they make their money is to gin up hysteria from within the community and to have money be donated to them by white guilted idiots who won't face the reality of what the children in these communities are actually facing. So yeah, I'm covering this, I'm trying to do my part, but I have to be honest, no matter how much attention this video gets, no matter how many of you share this video, comment, keep this story in your heart or in your mind, if you're outside of Atlanta, if you're outside of Georgia, nobody's going to be talking about this. There's going to be no extended coverage, no follow-ups or anything like that. And as a society, we're essentially going to leave this story on the sidewalk to die, much in the way that Zion's gangbanger friends left him to die. But hey, those are just my thoughts. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. As usual, if you like the video, you show me by leaving a like, subscribe for more content, follow me on my social media, support me via the support links in the description box of this video. This has been me talking about a tragic case in the city of Atlanta. Till next time.